I've been excited for this interview. I think you're the interview that I've pursued the longest since our show started. And I just find your kind of journey through tennis, it's not typical. And I find it very interesting. So I'll just give kind of the highlights real quick, and then we'll go kind of take a deeper dive on each thing. Not a lot of people who end up winning 18 titles on tour start at Gustavus Adolphus College. So that's one. And then played some Euro club tennis, which I think our listeners would be happy to hear about. There's this whole kind of underbelly of club tennis where you can go get some paychecks while you're trying to make it that I think is very, very interesting. And then had a long career from about 07. I'll get something wrong, maybe about 07 to maybe 16, I think maybe you decided to put on a collared shirt with buttons full time. You were on the Player Council from 08 to 16, vice president 14 to 16, and El Presidente of that from 14 to 16. Currently, director of pro tennis ops, player relations. Basically, when we're at the U.S. Open and we need to complain about something or we need something, we go to Eric, and I want you to tell me what I got wrong. But tell us a little bit about your journey, and thanks for being on Serve with us.
No, honored to be here. Have been an avid listener since you guys started, and thanks for all that you're doing for the tennis industry. I was never one of those people, and a lot of people talk about dreaming big, or I knew I was going to be a pro tennis player when I was 12. That was not me. I was 22 years old in Division III Gustavus Adolphus College. Ended up winning the national championship, and kind of decided that I didn't want to stop playing tennis. Was lucky enough to have a good friend who was moving to France at the time. Explained to me that if I could get a passport, I could go and play a bunch of these money tournaments. We would last about 9 months, and then I would go back to what I thought my profession would be, which was going to be a high school teacher. 9 months went by, kept kind of running out of money. People kept giving me an extra $500 or $1,000 to keep surviving. Stumbled into the world of futures and won a couple doubles tournaments. And, fast forward 3.5 years, was walking onto the grounds at Wimbledon, kind of not really sure how this all happened. Honestly, had the same feelings today when we're on this podcast. I'm sitting inside Arthur Ashe Stadium, walking out to a freshly painted court, and have a ton of appreciation for where I've ended up. Don't take any of it for granted, and have kind of got to live a dream life, to be honest.
Talk us through, so you say money tournaments, and what I've learned with doing this podcast is what I know natively. I understand what you're talking about, but producer Mike barely even watches tennis, so he has no idea what you're talking about. So when you say I'm playing these money tournaments, what does that look like? Where are you staying? What are you driving? Who are you playing against in these money tournaments? And what do you get if you actually win a money tournament in Europe somewhere?
Yeah, we could do an hour on this. I'll try to, get the high points if I can.
Don't rush. Don't rush.
For someone like me, I went over as a ranking of what's called a 0. Funny enough, a positive is actually a weaker ranked player. A negative means you're a professional. A 0 is like smack in the middle. A 0 might be making at these money tournaments 100 to 200, 300 euros per tournament. The cool thing about the French tournaments is the tournaments last like a month long.
Wait,
so
what?
All the weaker players start at the beginning, and you get filtered in based on your ranking. So your first match is against some people who are playing in to play you. You might win a match, and then someone better comes in that you have to try to take on. Now, it's great because every match is a pretty competitive match. The really even better thing is you can actually fit in, if you schedule aggressively, like 2 or sometimes 3 tournaments a week. So I had these 2 friends who were incredible, and they were literally booking us 3 tournaments a week. Like there was a day where I actually had to lose a match because we had to go south in the northern tip of France. I lost at 9 a.m. We drove 8 hours south, and I lost again on the same day.
That's depressing.
I made probably about 50 euros that day, but I literally lost in 2 tournaments on the 2 coasts of France.
Okay, so wait. Okay, so there's a lot that I need to, because I never played in a tournament that lasted a month. I also never played in 3 tournaments in the same week unless you were playing like, I guess I never played mixed doubles. So no, I was going to say maybe, you could say that Taylor Fritz played 3 tournaments in a week when he played in the Olympics, but okay, time out. I have some questions. So a tournament lasts a month. Is that like an old school satellite tournament, or is it just, are they all in the same city?
It'd be most similar to, you played Kalamazoo, like the feed in at Kalamazoo. They have the main draw, which you would play in. And then the losers like me who lost in the first round, we drop down here and people keep filtering in. And you have this massive draw.
It's a month. So it's basically like a month of losers.
Not losers, because everyone only loses once, but people keep entering later in the event based on their ranking.
So when you say per turn, you said 100 euros per tournament. And I was like, oh, that sucks. 100, 200, 300 euros per week. I'm like, that sucks. But is that per month?
No, you could get, look, I mean, all these tournaments as a ranking 0, you might enter with $0. If you win a match, you make 100 euros. If you win a couple, you might make 250. So it's enough to pay your food. You can get gas to the next tournament. But I mean, we would actually ask the tournaments if we could sleep on the couches inside like the clubhouse. That was our first option, go-to option, free hospitality, showers, stalls. We were not above towels on a wooden bench in a shower. Worst case, we went to these hotels called Formula One. There's like a double bed with a single over the top, shared bathroom down the hall. They were 24 euros a night. So if we split it 4 ways, it was 6 euros a head. And actually, I had more money than my friends, so I could often buy, if they won one of the good beds in our game, I could usually for like 3 euros buy a bed and not have to be on the floor. So I actually had it the best of our group. So again, imagine this is a start. So I got to the futures level where they were giving us a free lunch. I mean, I thought I had made it. All these people thought they were losing. They were having, by being in the challengers, they were failing. I was like, guys, we have got free lunch. This is unbelievable.
There's 2 things. This is fascinating to me because I think you're right. I think I could go for an hour on this. And secondly, I'm having a little bit of I'm second guessing myself because Eric and I will, hey, can you do us a favor and show up and talk to some people before the men's semis? I said, yes. Can I get 2 tickets here? Can you help me out with it? So, and I think we both kind of deal on the up and up. Little did I know, all I had to do was offer him a ham sandwich. I
deal better in croissants, but ham sandwiches, sure.
In New York, you can get anything. Producer Mike, I see you itching. Your sports documentary background is just itching to get in here. What do you got?
I mean, for me, I'm trying to understand then, like, financially, what was like a huge month for you? Like, what was like, oh man, we're rolling in.
I got $10,000 from friends and family, my couple of college alumni, my parents. That lasted me, through this process, probably 9 months. Ran out of that money. Then people were like, keep going, you're hanging in there. I got another guy to give me like 5 or 7. My parents, who had paid off their house, took out another mortgage to kind of keep me going at one point. I mean, I was losing money along the way.
Like, it worked out for you, but that's a terrible decision.
No, it was, I mean, like, it's like they're just piling weight on my shoulders. Like, it was just like,
You're a diamond now.
I was out there fighting for my lives, and so my parents could have a home. No, honestly, there was tremendous support. I joke about, I did a TED Talk about this whole story. If you want to waste 12 minutes of your life, go ahead and do it. But literally, I had like the support of the Division III tennis world. Like, I wanted to quit 20 times. And I would be at this internet cafe, broke, not, seeing if my mom, how much money was left in my Wells Fargo checking account. Could I actually buy a train ticket? And I would get 4 emails from random tennis players in D3 being like, dude, you're ranked 1,611. We're so proud of you. And it would like fuel me to keep going.
Have there been, and excuse me, ignorance on this, but I think this is cool where it's this, there's like levels to tennis, right? Like, we've talked to Max where it's like he's signing 12-year-olds that like he's signing Alcaraz to, IMG, and he sees these people. He's like, oh, if this kid fails, he's going to be 30 in the world, right? Like that's. But I think that the undercurrent of like, you're one of us, keep going. I think that's a cool story. And I don't know how you dealt with the pressure of that. Like, I played in Grand Slam finals, but I never played for a train ticket.
Yeah, it wasn't something that necessarily I enjoyed. I also recognize that there are people that come from far worse backgrounds than I do, right? That had far bigger pressures on where money was coming from. I mean, mine came from a support of love and warmth from the state of Minnesota, right? That was following me. So it was, yeah, there were days that I was certainly questioning what I was doing when I was standing on a train track in knee-deep snow and trains just weren't coming and I was the only one there for 3-4 hours. Yeah, I was questioning, what am I doing with my life? But then the train comes and you get to the next tournament and you make your €100 and you're like, all right.
So talk about, did you play for, was this all for a club? Was it individual? Because I hear the term club tennis all the time. How is this what we're talking about now, or is it slightly differentiated?
So two different systems. France, I think, really has the best system. They have a club tennis system. You can play on a team. The primary teams are in May, so you can make a bit of money in May playing every weekend. They also have like a big kind of top player league at the end of the season. These are sort of, different to that, which are these money tournaments that you can go and play throughout the year. So a lot of these French guys, I mean, you would have played a lot of them, they get to like 100, 150 in the world, but they're actually making a really good living because they have their tour money, they have their club money, they do some of these money tournaments on the side, which actually pay quite well if you are, a greater level than I was playing at the time. So it's a wonderful country for tennis. It's a little hard to kind of get your feet wet and understand the full system. I was lucky to have a great couple friends who spoke French and two Australian guys who, I just sort of piggybacked on them and their travels, and they got me into everything and took me around.
Are those, this is a lazy question, but I generally wanted to know, like, so then you end up winning tour titles, playing in all the slams. You probably played against a bunch of really, fun, cool people that you'd be able to name check, I'm sure. Do you look back at the memories where you're kind of standing alone or with a couple of Aussies and a French dude? And are those some of your favorite memories looking back, even if they were stressful in the moment?
100%. They're the best stories because you got yourself in pickles that you could never imagine. There's a guy, the two Aussies were probably the ones who got me to start, but there was a guy, Peter Popovich. He coaches on tour. He coached Karlovic. He's coached Petkovic, a little bit crazy, shaved head. He beat me in a money tournament. My two friends had just run out of money and said, Eric, there's a future starting tomorrow. You and I should play doubles. I didn't know how to enter the tournament. I didn't know what futures really were. I thought you needed singles points to get into doubles. We played this tournament. We won it. I slept at his house. We drove around in his car for the next year. We had to negotiate across a Czech border because Peter didn't have the right paperwork.
What do you mean?
A guy with hundreds of euros and a passport.
How do you? I want to hear that negotiation.
Negotiated.
How did you commit global crimes with crossing when you shouldn't have?
Peter didn't have the proper paperwork. I did. We tried the main checkpoint, didn't work. We went to a back road checkpoint. That didn't work. We tried another back road checkpoint. The guy gave me a sign that like money might work. So we put €200 inside a passport, tried to drive through. He pulled us over, searched the car, said renegotiated for €300, 2 tennis rackets, and my jacket.
Stop it!
Which I wasn't willing to part with because it was winter and it was really Peter's fault. So we settled on $220 and one of Peter's Technofiber rackets. True story.
Well, I want to know. I have so many questions. My mind goes to weird places.
So all to lose in the first round of a 10K future on prize.
That's depressing. I want to know where that my mind goes to. Where is that racket now? Like his uncle got like a racket. Like that's what happened, and you all are global convicts apparently. But I respect the hustle. I could go on for days on just these questions. But I will say, so you mentioned Mike and I were talking right before he got on air, and I was kind of reading through, and I'm like, I bet we're going to get some great stuff out of this club tennis, kind of those years of his existence. And then I remembered, do you remember a guy named Jerome Haenel? Yeah. So I to give Mike an example and to give the audience an example, I hope I get this story correct because it's, a memory that comes back from,
He's the guy who didn't fly, right?
Exactly. Yes, I got it right. So he was scared to get on airplanes. Like he didn't like doing it. He did it a couple times in juniors and then didn't do it. But he would play in these French money tournaments, and he was really good. He would I think if you would have flown And I'm not one of the guys who, every person who's ever been 300 in the world was like, if only something would have broken, I would have been top 30. And I'm like, no, you wouldn't have been. This guy would have been top 40, 30, 40, 50. Like, he could legit play. Okay. So I don't see him for a decade, right? I see him in juniors. I forget about him. You know, you see people, they come and they go to college. You see him 6 years later. It's just the kind of the way the tennis universe works. This guy goes through all these French tournaments, gets into qualies of the French Open, draws Andre Agassi. I think it's either first or second round, takes out Agassi on center court of Philippe Chatrier at Roland Garros. This is the club tennis. When he's talking about there's some serious level going on here. I don't know that they're all afraid to fly. There are probably different reasons why they're there, but anyway, some cool stories that come out of this. I think that's your next documentary, producer Mike. Okay, so let's fast forward. You win a bunch of futures. I'm assuming you win some challengers. You're on tour. What was like your oh shit moment, right? So I remember I walked on court against Andre. I won a match in Miami, and then I walk on the court against Andre. He comes up and says hello to me 5 minutes before we play. In 2000, I'm 17 years old. I had gone to high school 3 days earlier. And I'm like, it was that moment where I had like this cold sweat of like opportunity, excitement, like this is reality type thing. What was that for you after this kind of crazy journey that you had been on?
Yeah, it was a lot of different moments. You reference Andre. I remember seeing him in the flesh in 06, right, at a tournament that I was competing in. That was like, this doesn't really make sense that we are in the same event. In 06, I went to Basel and Fed was there playing Ferrer in like the quarters. We had lost in the second round. I'd never met Fed, but we were looking for a seat to watch the match. And someone said, go down by all the sponsor boxes because there's often open seats there. There's no like really seats in that little Basel arena of 7,000 when Roger plays. And so we went down and we asked the usher, and she said, oh, there's one group who says they have 2 seats that you can sit in their box. And, sit in their box. They're perfectly polite. The one woman is chatting my ear off. What racket do you play with? Where are you from? What's your rank? And I really just wanted to watch Fed. I'd never really even seen him live. And here I am, in the tournament courtside watching Fed play. And like 4 games go by and I said, okay, so are you guys a sponsor or who are you guys affiliated with here? And she goes, oh no, this is a personal box. I said, excuse me?
I'm Roger's mother.
Yes, I'm Roger's mother and father and agent and sister. And I wanted to crawl into a hole and die. Like, sitting politely the rest of the match. Roger's giving a speech, pointing at the box. And he's got these 2 assholes sitting in his box with his parents. I just like literally to this day, that was like, what am I doing here? Like, man, that was a welcome to the pro tennis tour moment.
I love that. It also speaks to them. Like, it's so nice where it actually took you asking a question before they, there wasn't any grandstanding on name. I mean, imagine being like, your name is Federer in Basel in 06. It's different gravy there.
And we have 2 open seats. So let's just invite these 2 losers to come sit with us.
I love it.
Like, because they're unused seats. I mean, It says a lot about his character and where he comes from.
They knew that you probably drove there from the north of France. They would have gotten you a sandwich had they known too. So walk us through the one thing I also want to know, because I'm endlessly fascinated by it. So when I would enter a doubles tournament, it was normally someone I knew well, or I wasn't really prioritizing like a stylistic fit. It was more along the lines of someone that understands, like, I'm here to play a different tournament and I need matches and let's do our best and let's try. But I didn't really get into the balls and the strikes of actually choosing a partner. Sometimes it worked out. A lot of times it did not. Walk us through how you actually sourced a fit. Was it purely based on who you get into tournaments with? Was it how much did you prioritize we might be seated versus I actually might play better with this person? Is it all of the above? And out of a pie chart of 100, like, how do you prioritize that?
Yeah, short answer is it's all of the above. It's in an ideal world, you're looking for someone that you can, play well with, right? You may play a certain side of the court, certain skill set, but then you got to align on, calendar and language and many other things, all while being the higher in the world ranking you become. There's only so many players you can pair with if you're looking at who you want to get into tournaments with, get seeded with, and maybe a plus or minus of 5 to 10 spots outside of your ranking. So it's a mix. Like as a double specialist, we at least I feel like I did. I knew my role in the sport, right? I was so grateful to be there. I knew we were just sort of a sideshow. But again, it was an unbelievable opportunity, and we took it as seriously as we could. And when I got on a roll, when I would find a partner for a year or 2 years, it was really, really fun because you were really diving in. You were really trying to improve. I had a couple of years with Julian Roger, Raven Klassen, Jamie Murray early that were really great. The hardest moments were, and all three of those partners at some point, as they all went on to be, Grand Slam champions or number one in the world, dropped me. And that's hard, right? When you're going to war with someone for a full year, every lunch, every dinner, traveling, and then at some point they come to you and go, you know what? I want to go play with Leander Paes instead. That's probably the hardest part of it all. And then trying to scramble and figure out, is there someone else available? Am I going to hit up some of the singles guys, right? Am I going to text an Isner or a Query? And so those guys are great, right? Sometimes they'd help us out for a week or two so we could get into a tournament. That's super valuable as a doubles player to have a top-ranked singles player who will pull you in. But it's a lot of just trying to make it work. And but ultimately, you get to be part of the show, right? And people ask me like, did you play pro tennis? Were you any good? I said, yeah, I played all the Grand Slams for 10 years. On the backcourts, you would never have seen me on ESPN, but I was there. I was in the locker rooms, and it was pretty freaking awesome.
Yeah, it's funny because we just see doubles, and when we watch it on TV, it's all high fives and fist pumps. Too much, by the way. Like you can't like miss a return and then have like, I don't know what you talk about after a missed return for 45 seconds. I really don't. And maybe that's why I wasn't that great at doubles, but it seems like a lot of conversation and gratuitous fist pumping. But I still maintain the hardest moment of my entire career wasn't a loss. It wasn't a bad day at the office. It was when I had to, because you talk about kind of breakups of relationships in tennis. It was when I had to look my coach who took me from juniors to sixth in the world in the eye in person and tell him that we were not going to work together anymore. And I was 19 years old, I think at the time, and it broke my heart. I had to finish that conversation in 7 minutes or I would have had an absolute breakdown. Do you remember the toughest conversation you had, and were you on the receiving end of bad news in that conversation?
Yeah, absolutely. I was like number 17 in the world, probably career high. Raven Klassen and I had made the Australian Open finals. We were on track to make the World Tour finals. And we have every meal together, and we're in Tokyo, and he texted me, he's like, can I come by your room and chat? And you just like, what we've had the last 20 meals together. Like, why are you coming to my room at 10 a.m. when we got practice at 3? And it was just like, hey man, I'm moving on to play with Leander. And I was like, Leander's done at this point. He's washed up. Like, that's a bad decision. But which was probably factual. But again, he saw greener pastures, and also to Raven's credit, who's one of my best friends in the world because of what we went through, he owes it to himself to give it every shot. I mean, he gave up a light, South Africa, the things he went through to get to where he was. He doesn't owe me anything, right? We were a business partnership and we were friends, but he owed, to himself and to his family, everyone who sacrificed for him, that if there was a better option, he had to go take it. And so he did. But I remember calling my coach, from Tokyo, walking around outside that, Daiba hotel, at 1 a.m., just basically in tears, just being like, God damn, I don't want to restart and don't know who to go with. And I'm like playing my best tennis, and you got to kind of figure it out. So, but that's pro sports, right? I mean, they see a lot of the great stuff, but there's crappy stuff, that everyone doesn't see too.
And then you project forward and see your ex-partner walking around with a different dude the next week, right? Like you have to actually up close and personal. There's every chance that you probably played him at some point down the road. I want to get into, I want to know what the hell the ATP Player Council actually does. So let's get into that conversation after the break. This is Served, brought to you by Chase. We'll be right back. All right, welcome back to Served, brought to you by Chase. We are going to continue on with this conversation with Eric Butorac. I think one of the goals when producer Mike and I started this thing was just to kind of, I say it a lot, get a peek behind the curtain, stuff that you don't know. And we've covered some amazing ground already with club tennis and, playing for your lunch and waiting for trains that may not come and playing. I didn't realize you could enter 3 tournaments in 1 week or play a tournament over a month. So we learned something new every week here on Served. You served a lot on the Player Council for the ATP Tour. I did not. So I am not entitled to my opinions on what happens. Walk us through that process, why you decided to do it, why you decided to stay on, what actually happens in these meetings. I sat in on one and I thought it was a waste of time with a lot of the stuff that was talked about. It was a very micro conversation that was focused on something that in the macro view of tennis wasn't really that forward thinking. And then it was like a throwaway 7 minutes on like some very important issues at the end. How hard is it to navigate a system when you don't have the support of, let's say, a players union?
Yeah, again, we can do a lot on this topic. I'll try to get through it succinctly. One, it was something I didn't know about when I got on tour. Jim Thomas, doubles guy, nominated me for this because he said, "You're one of the few guys who's got a college degree." I was like, great, that qualifies me. That's not a good start for the players.
None taken.
I know nobody. I'm new, but I have a degree. I got elected somehow onto this council, joined with Roger, Rafa, and Novak at the same time, all three of which I had never spoken with. I had spoken with Roger's parents, as I referenced earlier, but never
sat with them for a match.
Him. So that was definitely an intimidating situation to be in. But look, I was super interested. I knew I had a lot of time on tour, right? I practiced a lot. I took my craft very seriously, but like there's a lot of hours in the day. And this was a great way to use up a lot of those hours and feel like I was really doing something with my time. Also, I came in at a time when Justin Gimelstob was on the board and he was unbelievable for the players at that time. I felt like more things happened under his watch for player benefit than maybe at any other time. I think it was a combination of him, Andre Silva, who was the chief player officer at the time, and then, frankly, Roger, Rafa, and Novak leaning in, specifically Roger, and who was willing to sit through those nuanced conversations on, doubles rankings and give his guidance. I did have a moment, I would say, I probably went to the first 2 council meetings, didn't talk, just read all the materials, sat there quietly. And the third meeting, I think it was Adam Helfand was the CEO, and it was around the era of the blue clay. You remember with Tiriac wanting to change Madrid to blue clay,
Smurf clay.
And so this proposal came to us, and they said, Adam said, guys, I sent you all these materials. I want to get a real quick straw poll. What do you guys think about blue clay? And he looks to his left and he goes, Eric, you go first. And this is my opening speech to the Player Council right after 6 months. And I stumbled through something about, they say it looks better on TV and it plays the same. So why don't we try it? So he goes, all right, Eric says yes, that's one. And then Rafa goes next. And Rafa starts with all clay should be red. And then goes on a Spanish tirade, which he then finishes, and Giorgio, the board rep, looks at us all and goes, Rafa votes no. It then goes to Novak, and Novak goes, they had a blue clay court last year in Madrid. I got to try it. It's slippery and dangerous. I vote no. And I'm like, they're going, I didn't even get into Madrid last year. I was playing a challenger. I didn't know they had a blue clay. It was in my head. So it finally gets to Fed, and Fed goes, I think blue clay is a good idea. And then we should bring out the clowns and the elephants and have a circus on the court. And it went around, no. And Helfand has this board.
So you're the one, yes, and the 3 greatest players of all time are all against you.
Yeah. And I finished the meeting and Sam Querrey comes over to me and he goes, dude, I was going to vote yes, but by the time it got to me, it was 8-1.
But wait. I think this is a lesson because all of that power all of those no's. And guess which tournament got played on blue clay? I think you're underestimating your own power there, Eric Butorac.
I think that was the following year. There was some sort of trade that got overruled. I think the following year I voted no, and then it happened. I can't even remember exactly, but yeah, that was. So anyway, that was my opening speech on the Player Council, which I figure from there you can only go up, right? It's like starting at the French money tournaments. There's nowhere there's no low. Like it's.
I kind of like I just imagine this, and I'm laughing because I've been in those. It speaks to kind of the I mean, Roger said circus, but like the tennis circus where all of a sudden someone says no, they go off in a different language, tone, that they're not happy. And then it comes back, and then someone else is like, but I also like Roger, like, yeah. And then why don't we bring up the circus, the elephant, like the sarcasm, the mix of personalities, and also like the priority sets are a little different, right? I mean, it's like if you're Rafa and they're saying change anything about clay at that point in your career, you're going, no, because I don't lose. Like, why would I change? Why would I bring new things in? I'm very happy with where I'm at. For our listeners, the stories are great, but break down player reps, who's involved, how do they get nominated? If you're on the player side, who is on the other side? Kind of break down for those, they hear Player Council, but break down what that actually looks like in reality.
Yeah, so really any major decision in pro tennis within the ATP Tour is done by the board of directors. And at my time, it's changed slightly. I think they've enlarged the board just a little bit since I was there, but they had 7 votes. So there was 3 player side, 3 tournament representatives, and then the CEO, who could be a tie-breaking vote if he wanted it to be. And then there were some, if you wanted to change something really big, you needed a super majority. So you actually needed a vote from the other side to change that, something really significant. So that was the board. The board structure was how things got passed. And then we as the council were essentially the 10 people who, one, voted in those board members. That was really our biggest power, is that we were going to elect the 3 people who were going to have those votes for us. So in my era, that was Gimelstob, David Egdes, Giorgio Di Palermo, who spent the majority of the time representing us. Now, they would often canvass us, take official votes, unofficial votes. So we were the council that was there to essentially represent all player interest. When I was president, I tried to kind of put something into play where it's like, all right, I'm going to take, these English-speaking American players, and it's my job to kind of canvass that group. Stan Wawrinka, I want you to take the top players in Europe. Jill Simon, you got the French crowd. Suarez, you take South America. And we really tried to do our best to one, get their opinions on big topics, but also just listen and understand, hey, what are you guys feeling? What do you need better about your life? And frankly, that was the best thing I got out of it. Is this forced me to have dinner conversations with Diego Schwartzman or Guillermo Garcia Lopez or Kei Nishikori or people that I would have never reached out to and say, hey, I'm on this group. I'm trying to take it seriously. What do you need? What do you want? Here's some things we're talking about it. And frankly, got to meet a lot of really cool people along the way.
How many of those conversations were, I'd like to think that I had irrational opinions while I was playing. I was certainly emotional, certainly not easy to deal with. But also outside of that emotional set, I could say, I want it this way. I'll try to leverage anything I can to have it this way, while also understanding the macro elements of tennis. How aware are and were players of anything that happens in tennis outside of themselves?
Everyone's different. Again, if I had to put you in a category of what I thought, you were one who maybe wanted to voice his opinion without understanding everything, but also you can process information so quickly. And a lot like Roger, that it was my job to get him as much information quickly while in the locker room in 45 seconds, because he's brilliant and he can process it quickly. So some people do have that brain power, so you can get them. There are other people. Richard Gasquet, when I tried to present him some stuff once, he goes, Eric, I don't care about any of this. That's why I vote for you. You make these decisions. Don't bother me with anything, but I will never complain. And I was like, okay, cool. The frustrating ones were the ones who didn't want to have the conversation. but then sort of complained irrationally.
Mm-hmm. I tell the story of, I think I've told on the pod before, but it was, and I also thought my value was being able to speak freely. I think if you're on the council, it's tough to criticize the council. The top players were pretty well represented during my time. But I remember in 2007 in Australia, I had not the top 20 players, but let's say the top 20 most marketable figures in men's tennis. So maybe Safin was 70 in the world, but he was obviously, one of the bigger draws in tennis still. Peridon Trishiffan was in that room. So you try to cover different markets. And so basically you lay out probably a lot of the stuff that you were doing in those meetings, but it was a little bit more of like blunt force trauma, where I knew I only had, 30 minutes of time with these icons of sport, Hewitt, Roger, they're all in the same room. I said, these are our consistent complaints. Are we willing to do what it takes to solve any of them, or do we just want to complain about them? And then you go, okay, then you might have to, our only leverage at that point is participation. Is anyone willing to do anything? And it's like, well, no. I go, then we need to all just shut up. Because if we're not actually willing to do anything to fix a longer schedule, but it's all because we just have different interests, right? Like it would have obviously fallen on, me or US Open, America. You need time to negotiate what you want. It would have never been like, you couldn't get anything done between the French Open and Wimbledon because there's only 3 weeks, right? Like, so, but like Rafa wasn't gonna, do anything to risk a French Open. Roger was not gonna risk anything at Wimbledon. It was always gonna fall in it, but Fernando Gonzalez couldn't skip Davis Cup because he goes, oh, Chile, it would be a circus there. So I can't do it. So it was just basically the reason that we still play World Tour finals, like bordering on the first week of December, is because there are a million different interests, and it is very easy to kind of divide players based on what their personal preferences are. Until there is actually a voice of a player, I don't think that anything gets done. Therefore, we shouldn't be able to complain about it, because the same problems that existed in 2007 still exist in 2024. In spite of, I'm just doing the numbers. When you're saying, okay, 3 players, 3 others, and then a tie-breaking vote is the CEO who kind of directly works for the tournaments. I'm not real smart. I do talk too much about what I don't know, but I do know that tie-breaking vote is tied to one side. It's probably an uphill battle to get anything done. From a player council perspective, producer Mike.
How is like the agenda set each year, with the group? Like, do you guys kind of start in January? Is it a calendar thing, or is there a lot of rollover stuff that just takes a long time?
Stuff comes and goes. There's probably a half dozen formal meetings throughout the year, but it's depending what the biggest topics are. It could be calendar length. It could be prize money. It could be whether or not there should be points at the Olympics. It should be, doubles entry ranking procedures. Like you go from really big topics, like Andy mentioned, to stuff that really only affects small groups of players. But for those small players, it's super important. So, you try to take it all as seriously as you can.
Okay, let's move on to your role with the USTA. You there wasn't a real strong divide between, I'm a player. I feel like you might have been a player at the US Open in 2016, and then you start your role early October maybe of that same year. Talk to me about, there's a lot of things. There's a lot of director, pro tennis ops, and player. What are your titles, and what does that actually mean? And is it the same job that you took back in 2016? How has it changed? I want to hear all of this stuff. And then stay tuned, because then I want to get to his day-to-day during the US Open, which I think is going to be full of good storytelling.
Yeah, so there was some difficult negotiations between the council and the US Open back in 14, maybe 15. Gordon Smith, the CEO, kind of came to me after we got everything resolved and said, hey, we didn't realize that, players were a little unhappy at the Open. And, when you're done, we need someone like you to come and join our team. We don't have any former players working on the business side of the tournament. So about a year later, my wife got pregnant with our second child and was like, all right, ready to kind of figure out when the end is. And again, super grateful to the US Open to offer me an opportunity to have a, really important job. I feel like I was bringing them a lot of value right away, because they did need a lot of help in sort of how the player experience was happening at the US Open. So that was great to come in somewhere where you bring value, but really just got to learn a ton. I mean, the executives who run this tournament, who have gotten this tournament going from the, small tennis tournament that it was to the food and wine 3-week million fans that it is now. There are so many smart people that work on this tournament, from business ops to the venue to sponsorship to TV, and just to be in the room with them as kind of one of the trusted voices is really special. I spent 8 years working for Stacey Alister, who's done everything in tennis, run the WTA Tour, Tennis Canada, now chief executive of Pro Tennis and the tournament director. So to learn from her on how to navigate a lot of this, how to lead people, has been just tremendously valuable. The job has changed a little bit. I'm about to do my 8th US Open. When it started, it was literally communicating with players, picking out the menu, helping with transportation. It's just shifted just recently. I'm now changed my title to Senior Director of Player Relations and Business Development. Primarily, a lot of that is the work that I do with the people like you, Andy, and bringing legends to the US Open, partnerships, and really getting to be creative with new events. And we can talk about a little of that with this mixed doubles event at Fan Week, some finals weekend clinics, but really leaning into how do we grow the US Open? How do we make it bigger for all people? High-end hospitality events all the way to the free stuff we do at Fan Week. And it's a perfect bridge for me to go from doing all player stuff to more on the business side of the house, but still a ton of player involvement. So again, incredible journey. You talked with John, I think, a couple weeks ago about retiring. John and I shared an apartment in Wimbledon actually for a week. He was doing commentary and I had meetings over there. And, I know he's kind of going through that first year. And I feel incredibly grateful to be able to have finished my career and then gone right into an office with a whole new focus of learning, because it's hard to retire and I was sad and you miss things, but also like I had this whole new thing to work towards that really helped that transition be a lot smoother than it could have been.
Yeah, I want to give Fan Week the time that it deserves, but I have a couple of questions just on your day-to-day operations during the U.S. Open. Fan Week, by the way, is brilliant. You guys are going to love hearing about it. There's a lot of opportunities to go out, check it out, see some current players, see some has-beens like me and the rest of us. Some really cool experiences that has kind of been built out. It didn't really exist in its current form when I was still playing. It's been a brilliant thing. We're going to spend some more time on that. So walk us through, let's say, first Wednesday of the U.S. Open. You get up at what time? You go to the courts, and is it just putting out fires? Are you stressed? Do you need to take a month off at the end of the U.S. Open? Are we all huge, massive diva douchebags?
Yeah, there's some yeses in there. Look, most days I'm on site from 8 a.m. till the last ball's hit. I don't probably stay till the players leave because that can sometimes be 3 a.m. But I'm here from 8 a.m. till midnight most days. It's long days. That being said, it's really 3.5 weeks that the players are on site, and you can grind for 3.5 weeks, right? And you treat it like a performance. You eat healthy, you get sleep when you can. I actually move into a hotel. I leave my family in Connecticut. They come in and visit occasionally, but I go back to this LaGuardia Aloft hotel and just get 7 hours of sleep and come right back here to work. It's a lot of putting out fires. It's a lot of, if you could organize it right and build a really good team, which I like to think I can do, I treat people well. I have really overqualified people who want to come and be a part of this because it's fun. And I think I'm a good leader on that front. And that makes the job fairly easy and frees me up to address whatever's needed. And yeah, it's a live event, right? You could have people glue their feet to the floor during a match. You could have a hurricane come and rain on Louis Armstrong when the roof's covered. Like, crazy stuff happens, but I actually, as crazy as it sounds, I like that stuff. Like, I like having to just be like, wow, I can't believe that happened. We're gonna need to pivot. And I operate well in a bit of chaos, as funny as it sounds.
I mean, this is that wasn't for, I mean, I'm sure people remember if they're US Open fans, but you say that, and that's not a joke. Someone actually glued their feet to the floor from their seat last year and shut down the matches for an hour and a half.
Yeah, that happened.
How do you get someone's glued foot off the floor?
Nail polish remover.
Oh.
Buckets of it.
Oh, which is like, luckily you're in New York. Like, I mean, do you just have, now do you stock up on that ahead of time now?
We didn't have it last year. We had to get it brought in. We now have it on site at the ready. Yeah.
It's unbelievable.
Hopefully that person's in jail for a long time. Just discourage anyone from doing that.
That's another conversation. But
no, I mean, people say, oh, I hope you get some good weather at the Open. It's like, dude, the tournament's like 3.5 weeks long. Like, it's going to rain. We're going to get storms.
Yeah.
Something crazy. I mean, the year of that tropical storm was about as crazy as it got. You remember Diego Schwartzman was playing Kevin Anderson with a closed roof, and it was raining on the court through those side slats of Louis Armstrong. I mean,
the very expensive side slats in Louis Armstrong.
Oh man, we were playing matches still on ash because the storm, according to the city, the weather reports, was not as bad as, was not supposed to be that bad. But you would go on the concourse and there would be like Heineken, beer things like sliding through, like it was like Twister type stuff. And then you go onto the court and it's like, oh, there's Schwartzman versus Anderson, still going. It was really a wild night. I probably had a dozen staff members, so they closed highways, they closed the subway. My staff were sleeping on training room tables because they couldn't go home. It was, stuff like that. You're going to get something really crazy. We get it every year. Nothing compares to the year of the bubble COVID planning. That was insane. And that borderline pushed me to like a breaking point. But once you get through that also, and then it's like all the rest of the stuff, like you figure it out.
Give us one example from the COVID year of just like, I'm sure there were 127 impossible decisions to make. Give us like the one you remember that was like the most impossible.
There was a lot of crazy stuff. It was such a different time, right? We didn't know the severity of it all. That we had a player test positive, and then it was how many people around that player need to potentially be removed. That stuff was kind of freaky. The moment that sticks in my brain was, all summer long, it was on again, off again. Are we going to do this? Are we not? Are we using private planes to fly people in? Are we buying out hotels? I mean, we were making phone calls that were just like, I'm calling Emirates to see how much it is to send over 3 A380s from Europe and getting a price quote for that. What am I doing? But Stacy called me one day and she's like, all right, we got to work on the Open. We're starting from scratch. Open a blank document and I'm going to talk and you're going to type. And she said, men's singles, women's singles, 128 draw. And I was like, that's where we're starting? Like, we're really like rewriting the playbook. And it was like, yeah, it was, we all pulled together. It was a wild time. It was, super amazing that we pulled it all off. And, it worked. It wasn't pretty. It wasn't fun. It wasn't fun watching matches when there was 4 people in the stadium. It was eerie and kind of sad, to be honest. But, it was what needed to be done at that time to get through.
God, it feels like it was last week, and it also feels like it was 30 years ago. Crazy. I can't even imagine that. Yeah. Good thing you have even temperament, because I'm not built for your job. I can promise you that. Tell me, give me the most like random request that you've gotten. Someone walking up and like, I need this. Has anyone ever asked you for like a zebra?
No, I don't think we've ever had. I mean, all the top players have agents, and I feel like they go to them for the weird stuff. When Fed randomly wanted to practice in Central Park one day, that was sort of like a whole circus. So
yeah. How
do we get him there, and security and things like that become kind of like complicated, but also like really fun. Like, okay, how are we going to get the guy equivalent to the Beatles in our sport into Central Park and make sure it's safe and he doesn't get mobbed and he can have a practice and go home and stuff like that. It's honestly, it's really the joys of it all, trying to figure out those puzzles.
Let's dive deeper into Fan Week, specifically this year, the 2024 version of it. What is on tap and what are the opportunities? And everyone listening needs to know this stuff is free for the most part, correct? Yeah. So, I mean, walk us through the itinerary, what's happening on top of, oh, by the way, the qualifying matches, which we've had a U.S. Open winner come out of, Emma Raducanu, a couple of years ago. So you could be showing up at qualifying and watching, someone who could win the U.S. Open 3 weeks later. So walk us through Fan Week this year. What's in store for us?
Yeah, Fan Week started just a few years ago and has really grown into something big. I say it's if you've never been to the U.S. Open, especially if you want to experience the U.S. Open with kids, come to Fan Week. It's free. It's not going to cost you, hundreds of dollars to get in the door. If you need to leave after an hour because your kid throws a spaz, it's no big deal. Hit the road, and at least you got to do it. We want everyone to be able to experience the U.S. Open. We're acutely aware of ticket prices, and this is that opportunity. We also realize that the U.S. Open is really the moment in the tennis calendar to grow tennis in America, right? A lot of eyeballs are on our sport. The more people we can get to experience our tournament, whether that be on site, on TV, on streaming, on social, the better. We think tennis is the healthiest sport around, and the more people that watch it, hopefully want to play it. That being said, Fan Week is free Monday through Sunday before the U.S. Open starts. We've got the qualifying tournament, which in itself has over $7 million in prize money. As a standalone tournament, would be the fifth biggest tournament in America. So you're watching players between 100 and 200 grind it out for those final spots in the main draw. You can watch top players practice on Arthur Ashe Stadium courtside. I mean, you can literally go and watch Coco Gauff and Carlos Alcaraz hit balls from 10 feet away. I'm not sure if that's available in other sports. I don't think you can watch Patrick Mahomes throw passes to Travis Kelce before the Super Bowl, but we can do that here. Players are up for it, and we love showcasing it, and you can do it for free. That being said, we've added everything else that goes along with the U.S. Open. Every food stand's open. The sponsors are activating. It feels like a real day on site. And then in addition to that, we've added a couple of marquee events. Andy, you're taking part in one of them, the Mixed Madness on Tuesday night and the Stars of the Open on Wednesday, which are both going to be super cool. And happy to share a little more about those because they're going to be a whole lot of fun.
Yeah, walk me through both of those.
So mixed doubles, again, we talked a little bit doubles earlier, and again, I love doubles. Obviously, I played doubles. I think the sport is great. I think we just need to find a way to get the top players playing it. And that's essentially what we're trying to do here. I think mixed doubles, having men and women who compete on the court together is one of the things that makes our sport really special. That you can't do that in a lot of sports, and we can. So we went out to get the eight most interesting players we could get. Coco Gauff and Ben Shelton, Nick Kyrgios, Naomi Osaka, Fritz and Sabalenka, and Tsitsidosa. So 4 really great teams are going to battle it out for $500,000 of prize money, one set of tennis, super competitive. This is not a hit and giggle. This is not mic'd up. We're joking around. We're playing for real cash here and kind of seeing who the best, of those 4 is in the sport of mixed doubles. So that's Tuesday night. You can get tickets for as low as $30. So trying to make it super affordable so you can come to see an Arthur Ashe night session, well produced, Coco Gauff, Nick Kyrgios, some of the biggest stars of tennis Tuesday night. Wednesday, Stars of the Open, taking a different approach, right? Trying to marry some of the legends of the game, some of the younger talent, showcasing personalities, similar price point, $30 to get in. And you're going to see Carlos Alcaraz teaming up with Andre Agassi against Novak Djokovic and John McEnroe.
So sick.
Tiebreaker to 10. We got a concert on Sunday night with your friend, I think, Dirk Bentley, before the tournament starts. He's playing on Louis Armstrong Stadium on the Sunday before. We've got a great food event on Thursday. We got a block party on Friday. We're going to do a fan finals or finals fan festival for the finals weekend. I mean, this, again, I'm just one cog in the wheel here, but we want this U.S. Open to be 3 weeks of action that the whole world's, watching tennis and then hopefully wants to play when they're all finished watching.
So obviously everything I say is going to be extremely biased, right? So just take that with a grain of salt. On our pre-Wimbledon episode, I said that I think Wimbledon is the coolest venue in all of sports, right? It's our cathedral. It is, but as far as just an event based around the most elite tennis in the hardest sport, in my opinion, in the world, but the improvements of the U.S. Open, and I'm not someone who gives out credit like just because, someone says hello in a nice way, right? Like I think it's earned, but the food offerings of the U.S. Open used to be pretty crappy, 20, 25 years ago. It is unbelievable now how thoughtful you and your team and the USTA at large have been with putting together Fan Week, something for everyone, old, young, new, music, good players, bad players like me, saying it publicly who I'm playing against on the podcast so I can't fight you in an email. All very, very, very fun things. But congrats to you and your team, because I just think, listen, I've loved the U.S. Open since I was 9. But it certainly wasn't the event. Jimmy Connors made the event. That's why you went. And now you have Carlos Alcaraz who makes the event, but also everything around it is on an Alcaraz level. Whether it's the food, whether it's the entertainment, whether it's, what you can burn 3 hours not watching tennis and feel like you had the best day ever. So kudos to you and your team. It's always fun for me to go back and see all of the new things every year. It's like a new gift every year. So I kudos. I think you guys have done an amazing job. Excited to be a very, very, very small part of Fan Week this year. Seems like it's quite the itinerary. Eric, anything else exciting coming up from the U.S. Open 2024?
No, I mean, we're excited for a great year. We just announced our prize money, which is super exciting as well. We got a 16% increase this year for the players, up to $75 million. Huge numbers at the top, like always. 3-6 for the champ. But I'm probably most excited, maybe because these are the people that I used to represent back in my days on the council. But getting our first round singles number up to $100,000 to play in the U.S. Open. $25,000 if you make the qualifying tournament. First round doubles guys splitting 25 grand. Those are numbers that really excite me. Starting last year, we did kind of a base player package. We know it's expensive to come to New York. We understand players have a lot of needs. I'm acutely aware of that when I used to play. But we now give players 2 hotel rooms. We give them $1,000 travel stipend. We give them 5 free racket strings per round. We increase the meal per diem on site. The idea was, no matter who you are, we're going to take care of your base package, and you should be able to take your prize money with you. Yes, we understand some of the top teams might come with 5 or 6 people, but all players should really get kind of their core needs taken care of, because we know it's a lot to come to New York, and so that's been exciting to kind of be a part of the team that helps decide how this money gets doled out. And really seeing it go to those early rounds makes me feel good.
Yeah, and just kind of so our listeners fully understand, top 104 gets you in main draw of a slam. So your guaranteed prize money at a challenger below is what, couple $1,000 if you're not playing like what you're playing normally. So imagine your average weekly take being somewhere in the vicinity of $1,500, $2,000 that you can actually bank on when you're budgeting. Right, for when you're budgeting for expenses and all the things that Eric talked about earlier with train tickets and everything else. $25,000 for qualifying is phenomenal. It gets that next generation of players a chance financially to actually try to make it. And if you can get into that top 104 and you can schedule, that you have $400,000 banked, because listen, we don't fly on a team's charter. Right? Hotels, laundry, travel across the world. We don't have like the stressful time zone change of 3 hours. It's Australia, and then it's Rio, and then it's, it is expensive. So I'm happy for, listen, Novak and Carlos don't need it, right? But I'm happy for them because they deserve it, because they're the guys creating the jobs, the interests. Coco's doing that as well. But I love that you're mentioning, and as much it is to announce the headline, and I understand that's where this is going to live, is the headline number of champ takes away X. The fact that we're taking care of the players in the tournament to give them a chance financially to potentially become those players that are creating the revenue, I think is a great thing, and I'm glad that is something. That is a talking point, because it should be, especially the qualities part of it is a big deal, and something that you can watch for free in Fan Week starting August 19th. Booty, I've been looking forward to this show. I think your journey is fascinating. I told Mike before we came on, and I texted you right before we came on, and I asked if you used to write a blog, because I still remember reading this thing. I'm like, who's this fucking doubles guy, right? So I remember reading one of your blog posts, and it was, I think we played Lyon in the same year. I don't know when it was, like 07 or 08. And the blog post was basically like, I don't like this guy at all, but he competes hard. But it was like 7 pages of, I don't like him, he's this, that, the other, and he competes hard. It's been fun to share space and get to know you better post-career in your new role. I think you do a phenomenal job. You're always someone that I know I can text, and even if I don't get the response I want, I know that it's earnest, honest, and that there's a respectful back and forth. Hopefully, you would say the same. It's been a great relationship. I'm glad, and the players should be glad that you are in the role that you're in. I think you guys have done a great job, and you'll see too much of me over the next couple of weeks up in New York.
We can't wait to have you back. I know, I believe when I started here, it had been a few years since you'd been back to the Open. And I know that I feel like every year the number of days on site increases. So I think I take that as another feather in my cap that maybe I was part of helping bring you back here for more days than we're normally on your calendar. But no, we can't wait to see you guys both. And thanks for all you're doing to fill this need that we desperately needed in the podcast space. And so many great people are telling me how much they listen to this pod, and it's awesome for the sport. So thank you guys.
I appreciate you. We need to do an extended version of many of these topics at some point.